Gabriel moved through the rooms of his house on the wharf, no longer furnished as it had been all those years ago, but decorated in plain nautical white. Curtains with small embroidered anchors adorned the windows, and old sepia-hued pictures of St Ives hung from the walls. All of this had been done by his aunt, and then a management company who had, for nearly 30 years, taken care of its upkeep. Consequently, when he stepped through the front door, now painted in a tasteful shade of beige that probably had some fancy name or another, he hadn't expected to feel any affinity to the house. But he was wrong. Beneath the strange furnishings and the floral scent of his cleaner's room diffuser, the walls remained the same, and he was struck by the notion that they remembered everything, just as he did. "Come on, Gabe. Let's go fishing." He spun around, seeking out his father's voice, but it was only a memory. As always, the disappointment was visceral. "Am I going mad?" he'd asked a grief counsellor once. "I'm hearing voices, for pity's sake." "Not voices plural. You hear one voice. Your father's voice," she'd corrected him. "Your mind is processing grief. People often think they can smell a loved one's scent long after they've gone, or hear them speaking. Sometimes they see strangers walking down the street who resemble the one who's passed, so they believe they've seen a ghost." It had been a long time since Gabriel had experienced an auditory memory like that, and he was honest enough to admit it was deeply upsetting. However, it was also to be expected. This was his father's house, and memories of him were woven into its very foundations, so it was hardly surprising his psyche should call up the memory of his voice. Gabriel moved from the kitchen through to the living room, where he held a cup of coffee in his hand and gazed out of a picture window overlooking the bay. He smiled at a dog running on the beach, thought briefly that he'd go for a walk a bit later, then wandered to another window which had been cut into the gable end of the house and faced inland towards the wharf. He watched people passing along the waterfront, some holding dogs on leads or marshalling children, until his gaze came to rest on the face of a woman seated on one of the wooden benches facing the harbour. She wore her dark brown hair in a mid-length style that was wind-blown and brushed back from her face, which was pale and marred by a look of extreme upset, but still arresting. It was Detective Sergeant Keane. He thought of the reason he'd come back to St Ives after so many years, and decided it was a good time to go for that walk after all.